How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hopefully everyone is having a lovely day. Football season. I mean, we're dang near a month and a half, not 2 months away, be putting it like about 2 months away. Preseason coming up here shortly. Preseason comes around, fantasy football comes around. Oh, it's a happy time of year. The Cincinnati Bengals, though, as we know, have all the talent in the world on this offensive side of the ball. The question is, which one of these Cincinnati Bengals, because you have to believe a high-powered offense, you have to believe there's going to be a lot of good fantasy options, but which one is the very best fantasy option if you're a fantasy football owner this season looking to attack and grab a player off a potent offense? Now, Jamar Chase currently ranked by Yahoo as the third overall fantasy player out of everybody. So, I mean, if you go from that standpoint, obviously you'd say, well, Jamar Chase is the best option if you're going rankings. But we're not going rankings. We're trying to look at the value perspective of things. You know, Jamar Chase as the third overall pick, you're valuing him as the third overall pick, opposed to if like Jamar Chase was like 15th and he said, oh, I think we could get third overall best in the league kind of numbers out of him. To put that in perspective, let's talk about Jamar Chase. You know, again, third ranked wide receiver or third ranked player in fantasy on Yahoo Fantasy. Justin Jefferson comes in at number 1, so he's the number 2 ranked wide receiver. Jamar Chase, a guy who was on pace to have 189 targets last season had he played all 17 games. That would have led every receiver in the league. There's nothing more important than seeing those targets come in. Obviously, you know, you want to see touchdowns, points, but, you know, looking from year to year, seeing those targets come in. And Jamar Chase hit that one right on the head. The Bengals are going to have an offensive line that's improved. Joe Burrow is going to have more time to throw the football. Jamar Chase is going to have more time to work, to take tops off of defenses. And it could be something nice for fantasy owners. But we bring it back. I mean, Jamar Chase's ceiling is, he's almost at it. You know, you're expecting this guy to be your number 1. You're expecting this guy to put up 20 plus fantasy points a night when you pick him third overall. Otherwise, you want to look another direction possibly. And I think from that perspective, you say, I don't see a lot of value as in saying Jamar Chase is the best Bengals option. Is he a great option? Sure. Do I think he's your best option as far as getting that guy that's going to, you know, bring you to the promised land considering his draft position and where you take him? No. Let's talk about T. Higgins. T. Higgins, a couple years in a row now, 1,000 yards receiving, just around there. And T. Higgins is becoming a guy that's around third and a half-ish round draft pick ranking range again this season. T. Higgins, who seems to be a perennial 6 to 8 touchdown guy, and that is where we start to question things with T. Higgins. Now, I loved the idea of taking T. Higgins last season. I thought, hey, Bengals offense going to take that next step. T. Higgins going to play better, but we just said it. You know, he got 1,000 yards. Say what you will about the guy. I love T. Higgins. You know, Bengals fans will tout this guy all day and call him a top 10 receiver, but, you know, statistically, he hasn't been that. I get it, he's a number 2, but hasn't stopped guys before. To say the very least, you know, especially from a fantasy perspective, I'm trying to look at things from a fantasy perspective. You remember, was it Cooper Kupp, right? Robert Woods? Cooper Kupp, who the heck was it? It wasn't Robert Woods, it was somebody else. Or was it Robert Woods? I don't know, but you know, that year they was both eating. It was Brandon Cooks. It might have been Brandon Cooks. They had 3 of them eating big, you know, so you can't say, oh, he's the number 2 and that's, you know, part of the problem. It's like, well, he can benefit from that because all the attention's on Chase. I would think, and this is what I don't quite understand about T. Higgins, with his ability to catch in traffic, his size and ability, I'd really like to think this is a 10, 12 touchdown guy. For whatever reason, that's not come to fruition in Cincinnati. And being that it's his 4th year in the league, I'm not ready to project that. So at 3.5, I mean, you're saying this is your wide receiver 2. You would like to say if you take him at wide receiver 2, you'd hope you get wide receiver numbers. And that's very possible. You know, T. Higgins, he's not a bad spot here. I still like the guy. I feel like he's in that wide receiver bunch, though, where, you know, it can be hit or miss with the consistency. I think the thing with T. Higgins, you looked at last season, said this offensive line, his team was playing great. It was on an 8-game win streak. T. Higgins still was not putting up gaudy numbers. He still was not seeing the target share that Jamar Chase was. And that is what scares me, is if there's other guys in that round that's getting a much higher target volume, much harder, bigger share of the pie. But they also don't have Joe Burrow throwing to him. But we also have to remember Joe Burrow is, you know, just like Patrick Mahomes. It's like the number 2 is not a guarantee on your team because, yeah, your number 1 is going to eat. He's going to eat and he's going to eat well, but he's going to spread that football around. You know, there's going to be weeks T. Higgins might put up 2 points. There might be 3 or 4 of them, and Tyler Boyd might put up 15. And that's the thing. So I personally, again, I like T. Higgins. I think he's kind of placed where he should be. I think that's a good place for him. Let's talk about Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, a ranked 15 running back. I tell you what, I still like the pickup. I think he's a really good value here because I think he's, again, this is the 15th ranked running back. You're not expecting this guy to carry your team. 15th, you're thinking possibly your RB2, maybe 3, depending how you draft. And at that case, I say, all right, a lot of upside. Mixon, last season, 400 receiving yards. Could have had 500 played all season. I think, that was the highest targets share receptions he's had in his career. And we're seeing that more out of the Bengals. He's being more used at the receiving game, which is important for the Bengals because, again, you want to see, or important for fantasy owners, as you want to see these guys get some receptions, get some targets. My concern with Joe Mixon is it's not a surprise that he's not too interested in blocking for the quarterback. It's like, well, what happens if you bring in a draftee or you bring in a couple of these young guys that become better blockers? All of a sudden, they take over that third down role. The Bengals are paying this guy only $5 million now instead of 10. It's like, oh, they don't feel as liable and needed to use this guy no matter what. That concerns me. And it concerns me a lot because after the first four games last season, Mixon's seen 19 or more carries in 3 of those games. Bengals started 2-2. Bengals started rough. They figured things out, and they figured things out by not running the football. The remainder of the season, they were running the football once over 19 times. Once over 17 times. And again, a game of volume, it's very concerning, a very big deal. You're really, I feel like taking Joe Mixon here, you're a touchdown or bust, and you're depending on him to make receptions. Unfortunately for Mixon, he struggled in the red zone last season, which is a big concern. So there's a lot of question marks for Mixon. I think he's perfect for his draft position because he does have the potential for a lot of upside. I don't think there's a lot of downside where he's at. I think he's going to give you what he gives you. From a schedule standpoint, the Bengals will play top 9 run defenses 8 times this season. They will play bottom 10 run defenses 4 times this season from last season. So again, not the best of schedules there for Joe Mixon. You could see, the Bengals struggle to run a football. They're not afraid nowadays because they got Joe Burrow back there to sling that rock. But again, we bring it up. You got Joe Burrow back there. A lot of touchdowns being scored. Somebody's got to get them. That's the thing you're betting on. Nonetheless, I think we've been talking a lot about Joe Burrow. We've been talking about a lot about the Joe Burrow effect. And looking at Joe Burrow, and be honest, he is the guy that I think is the best value here. This is a guy going 50s, 60s in your draft pay. He's a 5th ranked quarterback behind all of these fast running quarterbacks behind Patrick Mahomes. And I look and say, if there's a guy that has the potential to give you number 1, number 2 quarterback in the league numbers this season, it is Joe Burrow. Who benefits the most from a good offensive line? It's Joe Burrow. Who benefits the most if T. Higgins does good this season? If Jamar Chase plays a whole season and gets 189 targets? It's Joe Burrow. Who benefits the most if Joe Mixon actually runs the football with effectiveness like he did in the past? It's Joe Burrow because they can't just put 6 in a box. They'll exploit it. No one benefits more than Joe Burrow from the rest of these guys excelling. No one's statistics are going to reflect more than Joe Burrow's from these guys excelling. And again, if T. Higgins makes that jump, Jamar Chase makes that big jump, we say 17, 18 receiving yards. We're talking about a Joe Burrow with 5,000 passing yards. We're talking about a Joe Burrow with 40 plus touchdowns. We're talking about a Joe Burrow who ran the ball 75 times last season for 275 yards. A league where the running quarterback is such a big deal. We forget Joe Burrow is not a Jalen Hurts. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's never going to be one of those guys. But he is a guy that is not afraid to use his average athleticism. You think of like a young Aaron Rodgers, kind of there where he's not afraid to run around and extend the play. Might be he's not known for his mobility, but he's gonna make some plays. He can make some guys miss. And it's a Joe Burrow who's again inside the 1 yard line, not afraid to do the QB draw or QB sneak. Big fan of it, actually. Not afraid to get down there and dirty. He's a guy that can get you 4 to 6 rushing touchdowns this season. I think he's a guy that can get you 250 rush yards this season. I think he's a guy that can get you very close to the quarterback 1 of last season, Patrick Mahomes, fantasy numbers this season. And for that reason, Joe Burrow's my guy. Because my favorite draft strategy, just like last season, my favorite draft strategy, it was Jalen Hurts around this time of the draft. I said, I'm taking him. Carried the team for a very long time, especially the first half of the season. If you can get a quarterback in that round, that area, that's going to give you top 3 QB numbers, a lock, if that, top 3 plus. By then, you got a couple running backs, you got a couple wide receivers, or a couple wide receivers or running back at time. You're looking really pretty because you didn't have to expend a quarterback spot yet in the draft. And it's so important to get those running backs early, get those wide receivers early. So if you could wait an extra couple rounds to get that elite quarterback, it is such a big deal. And Joe Burrow is my guy this season. Love you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.